Do you want to learn how to build a kicker like this for your backyard jumps? I'm going to show you exactly how to do it in this video. This video is going to be much more in-depth than the first video of how to build a kicker on my channel. That video was 5 years ago, and looking back at it, I kind of cringe because I missed so many steps, and yeah, just the overall like teachable quality of the video was not up to the standard that I want my videos to be at. So with that said, let's get into it. So this video ties into my most recent project, which is my backyard bike park. If you've been following my Instagram, I've been posting some updates on this. I am making a full video of the whole thing. And yeah, the kicker we're gonna build today is basically the same as this. This kicker is 6.5 feet tall. The kicker we're building today is going to go on the second jump, so it's going to be 6 feet tall, figuring you'll lose a little bit of speed in between the two. It just rained, so the ducks are going absolutely crazy with all this water. Step one is to get your computer out, get a piece of paper. We're going to do some ramp planning. We're going to draw a ramp right here. You want to figure out the height of your ramp for the setup that you're riding. The best formula that I've found, it could go two separate ways. If it's for dirt jumpers, 26-inch wheels, you do 2 times the height minus 1, and that equals your radius. If you're doing more of a big bike jump, you want to ride some trail bikes or maybe 27, 29-inch wheels on it, you could just 2 times the height to get your radius. Knowing what I like to ride, I am no longer a fan of steep ramps at this point in my life. I prefer everything to be a bit mellow. So we're gonna go with just the double formula and keep this thing a little bit more mellow. That way it's a little bit more friendly for people who just wanna make it through the set easily. You can always pull back off of a lip, but when the lip is too steep, it becomes harder to push through and still do tricks. So we're gonna go with a 12-foot radius on this 6-foot kicker. One more thing that I like to do before I get started is I use this kicker calculator website that I found online just to kind of figure out the length of the jump and what the angle is going to be. Unfortunately, the kicker calculator is in metric, so you kind of have to have another tab open, constantly doing conversions from feet to meters if that's how you're building it. Maybe just build it all in meters, but I don't have a meters tape measure. So let's check it out. Here we have our kicker calculator. We're gonna go with a 6 foot high, which is roughly 2 meters. So you bring that to 2 meters, 12 feet to meters. That is 3.6. We're gonna go 3.66. which gives us a 63-degree angle right here. Anywhere from like 60 to 63 is gonna feel pretty manageable. If it gets steeper than that, it's gonna start to feel crazy, depending on the setup you're going for. Now that we know the radius, the angle, and the height, we are going to look at the length of the kicker. This little feature right here, so 3.26 meters. Let's do 3.26 meters to feet. And we have 10.6 feet. The reason we need to know how long the kicker is so we can plan to get the right wood and build the right frame for the base of the kicker. With it being 10.6, 10.7 feet, we're gonna basically just go with a 12-foot base to give ourselves a little bit of extra room if we need it. All right, step number 2 for the kicker build is to put together your lumber list and go get some wood. I like to use treated 2x4s for the base, the back, and all my studs. I use treated 3/4 inch plywood for the sides, the banana pieces that I'm gonna show you how to cut. For the actual surfacing of it, I use 3/8 inch non-treated plywood. I found that the non-treated 3/8 inch plywood bends to the radius a lot better than the treated stuff. Then I just end up painting it to seal it up. As far as figuring out how many studs to buy and what plywood to purchase, I use 2 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood. For a 6-foot kicker, I've already done the calculations to know that I need about 12 2x4 studs to screw my plywood into. You could use some complicated geometry to figure out like how many studs you would need, and we're spacing these on 12, with a double stud every 48 inches so that your plywood has a solid spot to break on. I also forgot to mention that we double sheet our surface plywood. For a 6-foot kicker, it's going to require me to have 4 full sheets to sheet it, and there's going to be some left over. Okay, this is our final lumber list. We have 2 3/4 inch treated plywoods, 4 3/8 inch untreated plywoods for the surface, 15 8-foot long 2x4s treated, and this is just so we have a few extras in case you have any mistakes, and you can cover all of the bases with the base, the backside, and the studs. And then I like to just get a huge bucket of 3-inch screws, preferably deck screws because they're outdoor rated, or you can do construction screws as well because they're pretty strong. Might just recommend painting over them. Tools you may need for this job include, you definitely need a power miter saw to cut all your 2x4s. You're definitely going to need some type of circular saw. You're also going to need a drill or an impact, something to drive the screws in. I think the impact works a little better, so that's what I usually use. It's also helpful to have a ratchet strap nearby. You'll see why later in the video. You're also going to need something to mark lines with, so a pencil or a Sharpie or both, a good tape measure, and a chalk line. It's also very helpful to have a level hanging around. Got my 2x4s, got all my plywood, got my big bucket of screws. We are ready to start building. Okay, first step of the build, I'm going to build the base. The base is going to consist of 2x4s, 2 long ones and 2 short ones that determine the width. It's super important to consider. You want to build your base dimensionally the size that is going to make your final product exactly 4 feet for the plywood to be sheeted correctly without sitting inbound of your edges or hanging over too much. So I just made my mark at 43.5 inches, and here's how I came to that conclusion. So 48 would be 4 feet, that is the width of our plywood. First I subtracted 1.5 inches, which is going to be the thickness of 2 of my sides, 2 3/4 inch plywoods, and then because I'm building the frame to be inside of those 2x4s, I'm going to subtract another 3 inches, which brings me to 43.5, because those are each 1.5 inches wide. So basically just accounting for the width of all of the material so that the plywood lines up with the outside. Alright, at the end down here, we're actually going to take this 2x4 and lay it flat so that the beginning of our ramp is closer to the ground. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for the back of the ramp, accounting for the thickness of the 2x4 base. So 6 feet minus 3.5 inches. Okay, now would be a good time to double check your measurements. Make sure that it is at 46.5 so that you have that extra bit of room for your external banana pieces. We're also going to take extra initiative to make sure the back piece is square. We don't want any crazy angles, so we're going to put a cross brace in here. This is kind of a hack. You could use like lines in your concrete, but I'm going to use this table as a reference point. So I'm going to lay this 2x4 across it. We're going to take the back piece and the base that I already have over here, set them off to the side while we cut our bananas for the sides. The sides of the kicker require a very unique cut. It requires a bit of a special setup to make it happen. I used to do this on the ground in my driveway, utilizing just the space that the driveway provides. Now I've actually found a way to do it inside of my shop. Doesn't really matter as long as you're getting consistent radiuses. And I'm going to show you exactly how I set that up. First, we have a board with a screw to act as a center point of our arc. Then we have a board to screw it into. It's clamped down. It's not going anywhere. You could do this outside, like with another sheet of plywood, basically just to give yourself a center point of your radius. Then, if you come down here, so I have two notches. This one's at 12 feet, and this one's at 13 feet. That is 12 feet from the center point and 13 feet from the center point. So what this is going to do is it's going to move, and this is how I create my radius, by putting a Sharpie in here and moving it. You could also use a string and a screw to do this, but I've just found that a super long 2x4, I think this thing was originally like 16 feet, and then you can reuse it over and over again. A 2x4 with a screw and some notches in it gives me the most consistent radius, and you want it to be ultra consistent so that your ramp doesn't have any strange oddities in it. First banana piece has been drawn. I got a little offline here, just holding my marker a little crooked, but basically I'm just gonna cut the center of this big blob. So bring this over here. This is super important. So where you're going to connect your two banana pieces together, using the same center point down there, you want to basically draw a line across here, like I did there, and that is going to give you a perfect butt joint connection between multiple banana pieces. So I do that at both ends just to be consistent, and then I do that every time before I move anything. 12-foot radius line, you have your 13-foot radius line, and then you have your bisecting line on each side. And then you just repeat the process by moving the board down, making sure you're not going to interfere, and repeating the process, fitting as many as you can on each sheet of plywood. If you're really careful, you can fit 3 bananas on one sheet. I wasn't extremely careful here, but basically for a 6-foot kicker, you're gonna need 2 bananas for each side, which is why I buy 2 pieces of plywood, because you're gonna need that second sheet anyways. Now I'm just gonna repeat this on the other piece of plywood so that I have 4 bananas total. I like to cut all my plywood on a sheet of insulation because you don't really have to worry about cutting through anything. Oh, that was sketchy. Four banana pieces cut to perfection. We have the base, we have the backside, we have the bananas over there. So we're going to put this all together. We're going to brace these with 45s to make sure everything is square. Alright, for these 45s that I was talking about, I'm just going to take 2 pieces of scrap wood and cut 45-degree angles on them, and then we're going to use it to brace up the back frame and the bottom frame. It doesn't have to be a particular length, it can be pretty much freestyled. Alright, this part's super helpful if you can grab someone to help you hold things. Okay, we have our 45 pieces. I'm gonna grab a carpenter's square so we can make sure this thing stands perfectly vertical. I'm just gonna do the 45 on the other side and then we'll be on to the next step. Okay, these are the two 45-degree angles. What these do is they just kind of keep this frame nice and stable while you're assembling your banana pieces. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna tilt this frame over on its side and get it ready to install the banana pieces. But first, we're gonna connect the banana pieces over there on the table. We have our two banana pieces right here. We're going to slide them apart, line up the ends, making a butt joint. The importance of this butt joint is back when we were cutting our bananas, how we bisected the line with our using our same center point. That ensures that these line up perfectly, keeping the same radius. Now to connect these, we're basically just gonna find a piece of reliable scrap wood and put the piece of wood across this butt joint to kind of band-aid them together. We're going to connect them on the bottom side of the transition though, so that you have room for your 2x4 studs on the top part of the transition. I have this 2x6 laying around. You could definitely use a 2x4 or just leftover plywood. I'm definitely going to use something that is pressure treated just so it holds up in the long run. We're going to mark it about this long. This is the part where you want to make sure that it's a perfect transition still, and then go ahead and screw it together. I like to put about 8 to 10 screws in it at this point because you want this joint to be really secure. There you have it. There's our butt joint between our two bananas and a perfect transition between the two pieces. We got our frame laid down. We're gonna go ahead and lay the connected banana piece onto the side of the frame. We have our banana on the side of the kicker's frame. You have to make sure that the back of your banana piece is relatively up against the back of the kicker. You also have to make sure that there's a little bit of overhang on all sides because we're going to take the circular saw and cut it off level. Down here, you also have to make sure that your banana piece is tangent with the bottom of the kicker, but not with this 2x4. You want it to actually be tangent with this flat 2x4 down here, and then we're going to draw a line and cut off the 2x4 on the side right here. So just to make sure everything stays lined up, I'm going to sink one screw in down here, and then readjust and put one more screw in up top. And then we're going to draw a line right here and eventually take our circular saw and cut this 2x4 off so it matches the transition. I know that sounds a little complicated, but it'll all make sense when you see me do it. We're also going to cut the bottom of this off. So yeah, just watch the lines that I do and make the same cuts. The next cut we're going to do is going to involve the chalk line we talked about in the tools list. So we're going to put the chalk line down here, flush with the bottom of the kicker. Pull your chalk line out, line it up with the bottom of the kicker, and snap it. So this will be the line that we cut off of to make the bottom of the kicker flat. That was a dusty cut. We need to cut the top of the kicker flat. So I'm gonna measure 6 feet from the bottom of the kicker and make a mark. And then I can also come over here and measure 6 feet from about 1 foot over and make a mark. And then if you snap a line between these two, that should give you a perfectly level top of your kicker. So we have the smooth entrance to our kicker. It goes up. We have what's going to be a flat top. Before we get ahead of ourselves, we're going to overlay the other banana piece, and we're going to mark every 12 inches where our studs are going to be, but we're going to mark it on both bananas at the same time just so that everything stays perfectly symmetrical. Every 48 inches, we're gonna put 2 marks so that we know where to double the studs for the plywood breaks. That was 3 marks, but the point's the same. Now that we've got our marks, we're going to transfer them to the other side using our carpenter square. We're going to take this piece that we just marked off and flip the kicker over so we can properly install it on the other side. Now we're going to install this banana piece just like we did the other one and make the exact same cuts to make the bottom flush and cut off the top level. The next step is going to be to cut your studs. So we're going to count how many studs we need based on the lines we marked and throw them on the miter saw, chop them up. There's also going to be a difference in the studs at the bottom because you have to account for your base, which we're going to be putting the studs inside of until we get up into the plywood range. Also, don't forget to count 2 studs for every spot where you planned to double up. Starting at the top, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 13 regular length, and then we will cut 1, 2, 3 at the shorter length to fit in between the 2x4s. Okay, we have all of our studs cut. Those are the full length ones. Those are the shortened ones for the bottom. Now we're just going to put screws all the way up on both sides where all of those lines were marked. And this is the part where it's way easier if you have 2 people, so that you can have 1 person on each side holding and screwing them in all the way up. Okay, we just got this thing all the way studded up to the top in record time. So the bottom 3 studs are flat because there's no room to run them vertical. And then once we start going vertical with it, we run them vertical and double them up all the way up to the top. And at the top, we decided to run this one purely vertical so that we can have a nice flat top to screw our top piece into. And then we'll basically just run the plywood up and then screw into this corner right here. So now that we have all the studs finished, we are going to create some 45-degree angle supports for the actual ramp side of things, kind of like we did down here, but going in the opposite 45-degree direction. All right, this one is also going to be very freestyled because I just don't feel like it's necessary to measure it all out. But yeah, here's how I do that. Put it inside of here. Down here, we'll take the 2x4 and butt it up against the other one. And then up here, we'll just make a mark right there, and that's where you cut. And then you'll just sink some screws in right here, here, and down there. And that will support your face and keep it from bending in when all your weight's going up the ramp. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll be ready to start the sheeting. All right, we are ready to run our first sheet of plywood. Right here I have my 3/8 inch untreated ply, and this is something that you don't necessarily have to do, but it's something that I've been doing lately on my recent kickers just to make them last as long as possible. I actually paint the underside before I install it. That makes it way easier to make sure that it's all sealed up and ready to go. I used to put them on and then paint it after, but that actually leaves all the gaps around your 2x4s, and unless you have like a really nice paint sprayer, this is just a much easier way to go about it, but it does take some planning and preparation. So now that we have our plywood loosely on there, we are going to get it lined up and then have someone stand on it to make it bend to conform to the shape of the ramp. And then we're gonna put 3 screws for each stud going up, and we're gonna use a chalk line to indicate where the studs are so that we don't miss. Just like the other one, we're putting the painted side down, and then we will paint the top later after the second sheet. At this step, because that is an angle that a human is not necessarily capable of standing on, this is where we use the ratchet strap to go around it. The ratchet strap compresses it so that you can put screws in it. Otherwise, your screws will just not catch or pull right through. And then, yeah, before we set the ratchet strap up though, we're gonna tack this in at the bottom so that we don't get a separation gap when it pulls down. Okay, we're starting our second sheet of plywood, and this time we're gonna start at the top and then work our way down. Okay, so here's the setup. We have our original sheet sticking out. Our next sheet starts there, comes down, breaks there, and then we'll run our last sheet off the bottom there. And then we will chop the bottom sheet off there, chop the top sheets off up there, and then we'll be on to the next step. We're going to run a chalk line at the top and cut it off. But first at the top, we're going to add a 2-layer deck up here, and then we're gonna chalk line it equal with that and cut it off at that. Perfect. It's really hard to stand on these things because of sawdust and the angle. So I'm gonna make a temporary little step so that I can get up there just by putting 2 screws through this. It's a good little trick. For this part, I also angle my saw. It's definitely not necessary, but if your saw can do that, it makes it look better. There we go, perfect. Nice and ready for the top piece to go on. The ramp is unofficially done. It's structurally done, but before I ride it, I usually like to do a few things, tie up some loose ends. First is I like to caulk all of the spots that could potentially hold water. And then after I caulk, I paint the whole thing. And when I paint it, I use just regular outdoor paint, but I actually will take sand, like a very fine sand, I'll sift it out and I'll mix it into the paint so that there's some grip on it. You don't necessarily have to do that. It's just something that I do to be a little extra, and I think it makes for a really good feeling ramp when it's all said and done. I hope this video was able to provide some serious insight on how to build a kicker. There's no right or wrong way on how to build a kicker. I've seen it done a million different ways. This is just how I've been doing it, and I feel like it works to make a really durable, fun to ride kicker. So let me know if you have any questions on this. Send me a message, shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'm usually pretty responsive on there. And yeah, I hope you like it and found it informational. If you liked this video and you want to see more how-tos, drop a comment and let me know what you want me to make, and I will make another video on how to do that. But yeah, thanks for watching. Okay, a little bonus tip right here. So how I move these kickers around by myself when I don't always have someone helping. I have this piece of steel, and then I also have these Harbor Freight wheels. And what I do is I will actually like put little holes somewhere in the middle of the kicker using a spade bit and put the axle through, put the wheels on, and then you can roll this kicker around and easily move it by yourself.